I am Geoff Eido. This is Lunacy, where we discern the sacred from the insane and admit that whether we like it or not, we are all profoundly affected by the cycles of the moon. How? Today on the podcast, I interview my very good friend, Ron Weinrich, about peace in the Middle East. Ron is a veteran of the Israeli army and an incredibly inspiring individual. He's also a very dear friend of mine, and I'm really excited to get into how we manifest and create peace in the Middle East and what that might look like. Ron, welcome to Lunacy.
Thanks, Geoff.
Good to see you, brother.
I didn't know I was affected by the moon that much, but now I'm starting to wonder.
You are, all right? Get into it. Know what I mean? There's no avoiding it. The tides and all that shit. Basically, life wouldn't exist without the moon. True story.
Okay. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. So let's start off with a little background about you, Ron. Like, what's your, obviously maybe you could get into, I know that you were born in New York, right?
When I was a year old, my family moved to the United States. I grew up in like Long Island, New York, and New Jersey until I was about 15. Totally American childhood, video games, potato chips, hot dogs, all that junk. And then had a great childhood. I loved it in American suburbia. And then we moved back to Israel when I was about to where my extended family lives, when I was about 15. Graduated high school, had to learn Hebrew because my Hebrew wasn't very good. And like everyone after high school, was recruited into the Israeli military, where I became a tank commander ultimately.
Okay. And so that's just for people who don't know, it's mandatory that you serve in the military in Israel if you're a citizen there, yes?
Right, correct. Somewhere around 11th grade, you get I was about to say an email. You get mail from the military, where they're like, hey, we're the military and it's really nice to meet you. Would like to get a relationship going and you don't have a choice about it. So it's like, okay, all right. Yes.
And then were you able to choose your path there with the military or do they kind of dictate it to you?
So ironically, at least in modern times, you go and you do these like psychometric exams and you do these physical exams. And as long as your numbers are where they need to be, you actually you're given a few different choices of things to choose from, kind of like a multiple choice questionnaire that you get. And I knew that I wanted to be a warrior. I wanted to be a combat soldier. It was really important to me. And, I was pretty chubby, fat. I didn't like running at all. And infantry, foot soldier, infantry this, infantry that. And I'm like, I'm not running anywhere, man. I hate running. And then there was like tank corps. And I'm like, well, tanks are really cool. The tanks are freaking cool. It's better than running like a schmo in the middle of, the desert somewhere. So I'm like, I'll do tanks. I gave a 5 out of 5 for tanks, and I ended up in the tank corps.
Okay. All right. So you end up in the tank corps, and then first of all, also the psychometric exams. I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
They ask you, they ask you all these questions. I think it's like a thing called like a 300 questionnaire. It's like they ask you 300 questions in like different kind of versions to check your consistency. Well, there's nothing genius going on there, but they just want to get your intellectual competency. And then there's also an interview with these soldiers who interview everyone, and they see like who you are, where you come from. There's no like monkey business going on in the background. They actually do like a qualitative check out what you're up to and what you want.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So you said tank corps, and then what happened?
I'm recruited. The day of recruitment arrives. I get there. You're at the end of high school. I was 18. So I show up in my shorts and flip flops and like a t-shirt and a gym bag. And then you go through the whole chain of the recruitment chain. It's where they give you, they shave your head. They give you the uniforms. They give you the shoes. You have to you literally have to teach you how to lace put the shoelaces in the shoes. And you get all this brand new stuff, put you on a bus, and then they ship you for like a 4-hour drive into the middle of nowhere in the desert somewhere. And until then, it wasn't bad. It was like, it was like a really low quality camp, like a really bad summer camp. And
Right.
but then once you get to a base in the middle of the desert, some jerk gets on the bus and starts going, and you're like, okay, this is the real deal. So then that's it. And then the next 4 months, you're just getting whacked. Just your life's like a living hell for the next 4 months. And that's pretty much how to summarize the whole thing.
Okay.
But I must say, probably if I could put my life on a graph, like an XY kind of graph of development as a human being, those 4 months, there would probably be the biggest spike in my capabilities as a human being, both mentally, physically, and emotionally, in those 4 months, than any time in life, and I'm pretty sure any time that will come in my life. It was a truly extraordinary and near unduplicatable time in life, because I don't think that any civilian organization can really duplicate that level of rigor and discipline and absoluteness. It's like good.
Yeah. So what are kind of some of the, just if you don't mind sharing, because I have no idea about basic training I have, one cousin who's a colonel in the Army, and, but I, not this guy. I'm not going to join the military. I'm too old anyway,
I don't recommend it.
And just not my deal. So, and I have no idea how it differs from American boot camp, but I'm just curious, like, what are some of the highlights or things that were really impactful for you during that 4 months? Did they call it basic training?
And listen, here, well, I think one of the major things, and by the way, I wound up a year later becoming like a boot camp drill instructor myself, and I was on the psycho side of the spectrum. So like I was that guy. Totally, I was the guy that if they saw me walking from from far away across the base, I also had a broken hand. I broke my wrist, and now anybody who breaks their wrist in the military is like the best thing that could ever happen to you, because that means you get to go home and you're like on medical leave for a few months. Like it's everyone's dream. But I was such a nutcase that when I broke my wrist in 10 commander training, then, they're like, well, you have half a year of medical leave. And I'm like, I'm not taking half a year of medical leave. I need to go train men and, train soldiers to be great soldiers in the battlefield. Like I had that in my head. And so I showed up as the nutcase with the broken arm who climbs ropes with a broken arm.
Wow.
And that within itself was a level of fear and respect, because people just knew this man is a nutcase. There is no use in even messing with him, because if he's here, he's a nutcase. Just can't deal with him. So it made my life easy on that front. The main thing about boot camp is taking a bunch of rowdy, undisciplined, crappy, selfish teenagers out of high school and pretty much erasing their identity, so that you get that no one gives a damn who you are, where you came from. We don't care what house you're from, how much money you got. Everyone here is the absolute same. And when it comes time for you to charge on the enemy and kill the enemy, there is zero room for your opinion, for your personality, for what you think about it. There's duty, and duty is above all. And now we cling to our identities, like everyone clings to their identity naturally. So that it's got to be like beaten out of you, like when you want to make a really high quality schnitzel, you got to beat that chicken breast to get it real nice and thin and crispy. So you got to beat it with that hammer thing. Otherwise, it's just like you're going to do the whole thing. It's going to be like half. You know what I mean? Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like the schnitzel. I don't actually make schnitzel, but I'm with you. You got to beat it.
Trying to come up with an intelligent analogy.
Yeah. The schnitzel analogy. So basically you're schnitzel.
I'm a thoroughly fried schnitzel.
Yeah. Post boot camp. Nice.
Yes.
So it's interesting. I mean, that whole thing is interesting to me that, really like boot camp then is an equalizer for all the people that are in the military. And, you're sort of, it forces you to accept that you're all in this together, that you're all on the same team here. And that, there's nobody above anybody else. And there's a sense of duty where, you're going to defend your country and your people at all costs, which is a really beautiful, it's both a beautiful experience, I'm sure, for you to be in it and feel that brotherhood, that fellowship with your fellow soldiers. And it's also very interesting on kind of a larger scope because, we're all in this together as humanity as well. So that sort of, to me, kind of touches on what the ultimate solution might be, is to sort of realize that interrelatedness, or that we are all on the same team.
In a very ironic way, because we're all on the same team, and we have to remember that even in the military, like, we're all on the same team, which is this team, and we're out to like kill that other team. So there is another team, and we want, and we want to, or at least we want to defend our team. Like, at least in the Israeli military, it's called the Israeli Defense Forces, because Israel has no interest or business in attacking anyone else. We just live in a really tough neighborhood where we're constantly being messed around with. So we are required to be extremely strong so that we don't get bullied on the playground, if I put it that way.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. So let's get a little bit more into your journey. So you join the tank corps, you continue to to do boot camp with your broken wrist like a maniac.
Yep.
And train people. Then you get into your years of service.
Yep.
And so then just maybe kind of take us through that a little bit. Like, what was that like? What was it like roaming around in a tank? Sort of the brief kind of beginnings of that.
So after I was a commander in boot camp, then I actually went on with my soldiers to train them in advanced tank training, which is after 4 months of boot camp. Each person in boot camp gets, in tanks, there are 4 crew members. There's a gunner, a loader, a driver, and a tank commander. So in boot camp, we assign the different professions, gunner, loader, or driver, to each soldier. And then after boot camp, we send them to train them in advanced tank training, where that's where they actually like get proficient in using the machine itself. The machine itself is 100-ton chunk of steel, filled with all kinds of guns and bombs and ammunition. It has mad technology inside of it. You can put a shell through a window 2 miles away. Very advanced optics. It's a really incredible machine. Okay, it's like an F-16 but on the ground. And especially if you like off-roading and stuff like that, then this thing is pretty much unbeatable. The only thing that can stop it is either another tank or a big hole in the ground. Otherwise, you can't. Nothing will really stop it. So I did that for another 4 months, trained them in advanced tank training, and then afterwards I continued on to do some infantry work, because these days, tanks are usually needed for like big war type stuff, like country against country, big stuff like that. But today, in the climate of how kind of the military operates and the kind of threats that Israel has today from terrorism and all that, let's just say it's not going to look good in the media if you roll a tank up to a riot against people, because that would totally look like some kind of crazy third world country, and Israel is absolutely not a third world, first world country. So we don't do that kind of stuff. So I spent quite a bit of time as an infantry commander in the Palestinian territories, in those disputed territories, which was a whole different kind of work, whole different kind of world, and also unpleasant experience. I didn't like that at all.
Why didn't you like it? What was it like?
So for whoever's listening, for you and whoever's listening, let me open up the lens a little bit and give a little bit of context of what goes on here. Okay. So I spent most of my life in the United States, grew up in, bourgeois American suburbia, white guy, blue eyes, great, good life, never had a safety problems growing up. None of that stuff. Just really wasn't a part of my life. I had a very safe and protected life. Then you come to Israel, and in Israel at the time, every week there was a public bus that was exploding by a suicide bomber in Tel Aviv every single week. You had shootings everywhere, stabbings everywhere, rockets flying into the country. It's just like, in contrast to America, it's like madness. Imagine if, I don't know, just imagine if like every other day there was like on the news, it was like, 10 rockets were fired into San Diego from Tijuana this morning again. 2 children were, injured severely. And that was just like the news of the day. Nothing special. Mm-hmm. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
So it's a different reality. Now, I kind of made an analogy earlier that it's a tough neighborhood. Okay. It's like there's this odd situation here in the Middle East where I just thought about this the other day. Because I heard a story. I have a friend who happens to be in prison right now, and he came out for a day. So I went over his place to say hi, and he was telling me about the dynamics in the prison. You got to be friends with this guy. You got to be friends with that guy. You got to like position yourself in a way, because prison ain't a nice place. So, we can be as like, I can walk into prison and I could be like, I'm going to treat everyone with peace and with love and with gratitude and grace. Okay, well, you better cover yourself when you go into the shower with grace and gratitude and all that stuff. Okay, like it's like, please don't be a dummy. So this neighborhood is tough. There are not nice. They're bullies on the playground, and so you have to keep yourself strong. Now, why do I say that? Because I could, if I share with you like a story or two right now, then for anyone who's not from this neighborhood, your brain could immediately, or your internal dialogue could immediately say to you like, well, that's not okay. Well, that's messed up. Well, that, and you just got to get that. Yeah. It's a different world, like
you're at war.
Right. It's different reality. So it's like, it's like, oh man, they don't have bottled water in Africa? That's such a shame. What, they don't have kale in Africa? Oh my God, how do those people keep healthy? It's like, dude, different world. Don't even go there. It's not. So I'm saying that just to kind of, for whoever's listening, got to change the dial on the radio to tune into this neighborhood. Like the Middle East is a different place than Western civilization regularly. Okay. So, the experience when going into the Palestinian territories is that you have on one hand, you have Israel, which is a super high-tech first world country. It is a miracle. It's incredible. It's a it's the size of New Jersey. It's this tiny, itty bitty little place that turned itself from a hellhole into an oasis. And all around it, there are different, there are different countries and different tribes, and you got Sunnis and Shiis and I mean, there's a whole thing that's called tribal culture, which is a whole different story. And, you have Hamas and Fatah and the Islamic Jihad and all these different organizations which are hell-bent on destroying the Jews, which are always, they will wake up in the morning and they think to themselves, how can we cause terror and kill Jews? So there's like an incoming threat all the time. And Israel has to defend itself against that, unfortunately, very unfortunately. And then what happens in turn is that they get punished. Like the Palestinian side is, and their leadership doesn't look out for them, and Israel punishes them for the monkey business, for the stuff that they do. So it's this really unworkable situation, super unfortunate, where you have one group of people which are in pretty bad shape, and you have another group of people which are in relatively good shape and need to defend themselves against the ones in bad shape that are trying to cause trouble for the ones in good shape. It's like if there was like Beverly Hills and Compton, and Compton was hell-bent on screwing the people in Beverly Hills. Beverly Hills people would get security guards, build high walls, find a way to, to keep them out. And so that's kind of the situation, more or less.
Yeah, and it sounds like also because there's so many different factions and tribalistic entities, and there's Hamas and Fatah and Hezbollah and et cetera. All these different organizations that want to destroy the Israeli state, and then whenever they attack, because they might just be doing it of their own accord, then the Palestinian Authority or whoever it is that's the leader of that faction they get blamed because those are their people, so to speak. But they don't have any control over who's doing what when, right? Am I getting that right?
Who doesn't have control?
Like you were saying that the Palestinian, you said that they get blamed for whatever happens, whoever's doing what. I'm assuming that's the Palestinian Authority or whoever's in charge of the Palestinian movement. Is that correct?
Well, kind of, because even then there's internal politics. So you have the Palestinian Authority, but you have just imagine it's like parties. You have the Fatah party, the Islamic Jihad party. So you have like a government that they need to cater to these groups, these factions that people voted for. Of course, people voted for them under intimidation. And on the charter on the constitution, the charter of Hamas, in their charter it says to wipe out the Jewish state, to throw them into the ocean. So like when that's written in your constitution, that's kind of a problem. It's like tough. It's tough to like do business with someone like that, or to. I'll give you a real interesting example about the duality of what happens in this region. Okay, when I say duality, I mean that there are like two realities that exist parallel to each other at the same time, and that they go against each other in some way, but it really is like two parallel realities, and I need to somehow live with both of them at the same time. And that's kind of a challenge for human beings if we haven't noticed yet. In the Palestinian territories, they don't live, just so you get the picture, in their villages. They don't necessarily have, like an infrastructure, a developed infrastructure for sewage and garbage. They just put their garbage in heaps in the village and they just burn it. No one pays taxes there. There's no enforcement or municipal responsibility of any kind. So there's also no street lights. There's no, when it gets dark, it's just night. That's it. It's like, so, in a 5 miles, you can have a place that's very underdeveloped here. And then 5 miles away, you can have this booming, bustling Israeli city which is like you came to a high-tech, city in America somewhere. So there's a really stark contrast. And there was this one highway that goes from inside of the Israeli territories to the disputed territories. And this was a highway that was notorious for attacks. Now, why it was notorious for attacks it still is, by the way, is that people would stand in the ditch to the side of the road, and when they'd see a car with a yellow license plate, which means it's an Israeli license plate, they would hide in the ditch, they would get stones ready, and then as soon as the car came by, someone would whistle, and then the people would jump out of the ditch and they would throw stones, like big stones, through the windshield of the car to have the car careen off the highway and kill whoever's inside, pretty much. Usually families, usually those cars are full. So that would happen again and again. And me as the military, I would, me and my peers, we would be patrolling on those all the time, looking for all kinds of shady business like that. And one time, one of those things happened. And the way that we would handle that sometimes is that we would, unfortunately, you got to do like some kind of collective punishment. Why? Because you don't know who these kids are who's throwing these stones that like they're literally like trying to murder people. Mm-hmm. And by the time that my soldiers and I would get out of the armored Hummer
Yeah.
These kids were like a kilometer away. They just run away. There's no way to catch these kids. And even if we caught them, what are you going to do to some 12-year-old schmo who, like, you can't do anything to them anyway. So it's like just a cat and mouse chase all the time. It never ends. And so the way that the military deals with that is they say, okay, these attacks keep coming from that village. So what we're going to do, we're going to bring a bulldozers. We're just going to put a giant pile of dirt on the road, that the entry road to that village, so that there are no cars coming in and out of that village anymore. And all the people in the village that are going to work are going to have to walk to work now. Okay. In August, in the Middle Eastern summer. And not only that, we're going to put a checkpoint, like a checkpost outside on their way to the highway. And when they're on their way to work, we're going to do, this is part of something that we call psychological warfare. It's like you kind of want to get into people's heads so that they feel that we're watching, that they can't cause any trouble because you're being watched. So we would take the IDs, check the IDs of everyone coming, and Geoff, you'd come out and I'd be like, ID, please. And you'd be like, oh God, and then we'd say, go, please sit over there. And then you'd sit in the sun like an idiot for half an hour. And then I would go and I would pretend like I'm checking your ID. I'd give your ID back. And then I'd say, you can go. And then you're out. You're an hour or two late to the work. And they get angry at you at work. Hopefully at the end of the chain, if you ever hear that your son went and threw stones on a car somewhere, you'd slap him so damn hard because, to never do that again. There's no other way to really do anything. One day, my general in the area, there's an attack that happens on the street, and my general says that on my patrol, I need to check the IDs of 80 people randomly. 80 people is a lot of people to check, okay? 80 people is a lot of people to check, okay? And I was really pissed at this. I'm like, this is BS. It's not my job. I don't like this. I really did hate it. I hated putting random people that I don't know, human beings, that didn't do anything, and like punishing them for some stupid kids that, and I felt bad doing that because I knew that if anyone would do that to my dad, if some schmuck just came up to my father in the middle of the street and was like, ID, sir. And he said, well, why do I need to give you my ID? And then some guy said, because I said so. Give me your ID. Shut up and sit down over there. My dad would be one of those guys that got shot. Like he would cause him, like, run amok, and he'd get shot. He'd end up like getting shot or something. Short-tempered. And I always felt bad about that. I don't like it.
Yeah.
So I said, in my little brain, I said, you know what? I'm going to pretend like I forgot to do this. I'm not going to take part in this. So after 7 hours of my shift, they get on the radio and they said, Ron, you only got like 10 IDs through. You have like 70 more to go in an hour. And I said, oh, I forgot about that. Oh, dear gosh, golly, and I get back to base and they're like, well, you're going to be court-martialed. You did not obey a direct order. So I put on my nice uniform. Yep.
Okay. So
military.
Get court-martialed, that means you're demoted then? What are the ramifications of getting court-martialed?
Well, you go, it's court, right? You go to court, you get tried. Okay. And at the end of that trial, the officer that tries you decides how he wants to punish you for that. So, I mean, I thought to myself that, like, what's the worst that can happen? I could go to jail or something. But I was being a smart ass, and I thought I wouldn't get caught, but I did get caught in the end. And fact of the matter is that I disobeyed an order. So I stand in front of the judge, and he says, Ron Weinrich, rank such and such, your military number such and such. You are being tried here for disobeying a direct order. You were to do this and that, and you didn't do it. How do you plead? And I said, guilty, sir, because I wasn't even going to argue about it. I disobeyed the order. And then luckily, I mean, he didn't send me to jail, but he did take my leave away. So I had to stay for another 3 weeks and do patrols for 3 weeks, 8 hours on, 8 hours off, 8 hours on, 8 hours off for 3 whole weeks. That was my life. the interesting thing that happened during that time where I was just like sitting in my armored Hummer like a zombie, you know, like I was just finished with this. This is just up and down the same damn highway again. For anybody watching here who's like in the highway patrol, you deserve a medal. Okay. At some point, we see these, this is like nighttime. I see these two young Palestinian dudes walking on the side of the road on the highway with jackets on. And I pass them. And about a minute later, I think to myself, that was really strange. I tell my driver, turn the Hummer around really fast and go after them. And I tell them, cut them off with the Hummer. And I tell my soldiers in the back, listen, I'm going to get out and talk to them. And when I do that, you guys cover me, like open up the doors and, put your sights on them to make sure they don't do anything funny. So I go out and I walk up to the two guys and I say eloquently in Arabic, I say, good evening, gentlemen. Where are you from? What are you doing here? And they answer me. And then they call me. I get a call in the vehicle on the radio. So I tell them, hang on a second. I turn my back to them. And the minute I turn my back to them, my soldiers go, whoa, 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 stop, 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 stop. And I turn around and I say, what the hell happened? And my soldier said, when you turned your back to them, they threw Molotov cocktails outside of their jacket. They had Molotov cocktails like fire bombs in their jacket pockets. And they threw them out when I turned my back to them.
Oh, they just ditched them.
They ditched them.
So they were hiding them in their coats. You turn around and they were like,
yeah.
And your buddy saw. Okay.
Yeah. And I was a real sweetheart. I was like, loving, compassionate. It wasn't like, I had all my gear on and I was like, badass soldier, but I was being like respectful, Under my nose were like literally two terrorists. Now, if we had not been there, those fire bombs would have gone through the windshield and killed a family in a car, So I won't forget in my life the irony and the duality of a week before that. I was being this smart ass, I'm not going to obey an order I'm going to check people's IDs and I won't be a cog in the mechanism of the politicians, And 1 week later, I literally catch two terrorists with my own hands on the same highway, like a mile away from where the whole thing happened. And that was like, oh, wow, this place is really complicated, dude. Mm-hmm. It's, like, what do you do about that?
Yeah. What did you do about that? What did you do with the two young men?
Nothing. They were arrested.
That was it.
And we sent them to jail for many years.
Oh, okay. Right. I guess that makes sense.
And even that, by the way, I think they were like 16 or 17.
Mm-hmm.
And even for them, they live in a really crappy village that when it gets dark, there's no lights out. They can't go do anything fun. There's nothing fun to do. They just, they don't make any money. They don't have it's not a fun existence for them. So it's this cluster of unworkability that somehow, God willing, will get worked out someday.
Yeah, good. So let's get into that. Also, I certainly want to talk about your own history in the tank and kind of what happened to you. If you're open to telling that story, sharing that story with people, I'm sure they'd love to hear it.
Yep. I'll give the super short version, the non-dramatic one. Okay. So it's like, after my service, dealing with the Palestinians in 2006 in the summer, there was a war that broke out between Israel and Lebanon called the Second Lebanon War. It's called the Second Lebanon War because there was a First Lebanon War, and this one happened after the First Lebanon War. You got that?
Oh, yeah, I get it. Number one, number two.
So I had the privilege of leading my men during the Second Lebanon War, and while I was in Lebanon, I was leading a convoy of tanks and other large armored vehicles through a Lebanese village. And at some point, there was my tank crashed into a building in this village. And a couple of tons of concrete came falling from very high above the tank onto the tank and through the open hatch that was above my head and onto my back. And so I suffered a pretty bad, severe spinal cord injury. Also, my left shoulder was crushed and my ribs were broken into my lungs. So let's just say it was a party.
A party I would never want to go to.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah. It was like, I'm making light of it, but it was, I guess you could call it was like a near death experience. Okay. Like there was moments where I was really focused. It was clear to me. I was talking to myself, was completely immobilized, paralyzed, and thought and all I could do was just keep it together. Don't lose consciousness. Don't fall asleep. If I fall asleep, then it's over. Then I'm not going to wake up. Talking to myself, talking to God, talking to myself, talking to God. And thank God, I'm still around to tell it was a miracle. The guy who replaced me the next day was hit by an anti-tank missile and was killed as my replacement.
Wow.
Yeah. And 3 days prior to that, I sat underneath a peach tree and with a newspaper and saw, when I opened the newspaper, I saw the photos of a couple of my soldiers who were injured and killed elsewhere. And I was just shocked. It was surreal. I was like, what the hell is going on here? This is, these are my guys. And it was just crazy. And I looked at in the top right corner of the newspaper, there's like the date, because I kind of lost track of time. The war was going on for like a month. And I looked at the date and I thought to myself, Jesus, there's my older brother is supposed to get married soon in a few weeks. And this war is going on. And this is like a real big deal in my family. And like, was the wedding going to happen, or am I going to be at the wedding, or what? And underneath Peachtree, I mean, I'm not a religious guy or anything. I wasn't at the time. And underneath that Peachtree, I sat and I just vividly recall thinking to myself, God, I don't know what you got in the cards for me, man, but if you're planning on killing me over the next couple of days, could you at least do me a favor and like injure me or something? Because I got to make sure, like, I can't have this wedding get canceled. And that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
Yep.
So your tank ran into a building and the building essentially fell on the tank. And then you have like an open hole above you. And so then all this concrete, that just sounds, I'm so sorry that happened. And then you rushed to the hospital. And then what was that like? What was the recovery like? And were you able to make it to your brother's wedding?
Yeah. So they whisked me off in a helicopter. I made it to a hospital. I mean, after that, they had to stabilize me, give me the surgery to like literally bring structural integrity back to my spine, back to my body. Otherwise I would just flop over or something. So they put a bunch of rods in me. And from then on started a half year of acute rehabilitation, meaning I became an overgrown baby, like an adult baby. I couldn't go to the bathroom by myself. I was, suddenly found myself in a position where I can't control my bowels and my urine. I can't walk, my legs are paralyzed. My stomach and back muscles are paralyzed. My lungs were punctured, so I couldn't breathe well. Everything was just completely messed up on the physical level, on the emotional level, on the mental level, having to rediscover myself as a human being that one day I'm this like nutcase tank commander leading my men gun-ho in the battlefield, and 1 minute later I can't get dressed by myself. I can't be showered by myself. I had to have this, never forget, I had to have this beautiful, 21-year-old nurse, Russian, blonde, blue-eyed. She looked like one of those like porcelain dolls. Had to sit my butt on the toilet and wipe my ass for me. And I had to and I'm like 20 years old, hotshot soldier. And it's just like, I just wanted to die. I just wanted to disappear. I can't believe that this is my life. This is horrible. But then I had to get independent really fast. I was totally dependent and I had to get independent as fast as possible. That was my mission in life. And to do anything I can to live a really great life.
And that also left you in a wheelchair.
Right. So I've been rolling around ever since. It's been almost 17 years. And so much personal development, so much the development has been insane ever since. developing who I am as a human being, and also untraining myself, undeveloping myself from all the, mechanisms, all the security mechanisms or guarding mechanisms that I had to put up from being in a wheelchair. It's life is very different when you're living it disabled from a wheelchair. The world looks at you differently, treats you differently, and it's anything but pleasant. So there's always this struggle around that, But I have to say that I really do live a pretty amazing life, whether it's skiing in Aspen and water skiing in the Sea of Galilee and traveling pretty much wherever the hell I want and doing the things that I really love. We know each other from LA, and when I was in LA, what brought me to LA was the music scene. I've performed in front of millions of people as a musician, and I've always had, a profound love for coaching and, transformational workshops. And these days I have an incredible company that we do executive coaching from some of the biggest firms on the planet, from Boeing and IBM and General Electric and the American FBI. And I work with some secret organizations, cannot be named, here in Israel. And it's a really awesome life,
Yeah. If you're enjoying this program, if you love Lunacy, please consider becoming part of our team. Go to patreon.com/Lunacy podcast to become a member of our team. You can choose a number of different levels to support us on a monthly basis so that we can continue the work of exploring the love operating system, how best to be of service, and how to live life to the fullest. Thank you so much for your support. Much love, everybody. So let's get into peace in the Middle East and how it is that we create that, given all of the factions and all of the tribalism and all of the insanity that's going on there. How, I know this is something that you're passionate about. How is it that we get there?
The only answer to that question is, I don't know. And anyone that says an answer other than that is full of it. Now, why is that? That's because if you go onto Amazon and you look for books on how to solve the Middle East crisis, blah, 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 we'll find very well thought out books and strategies by the greatest minds in humanity, of all the greatest professors and faculties for public diplomacy, international, whatever, that wrote about the subject, and none of it made any difference in reality. It's like that. We got to kind of get with reality and look it straight in the eyes and say, like, wow, none of this really made a difference. There is, like, maybe there's no pill for this thing. Maybe there isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's nothing to fix, really. Maybe we just got to kind of work on ourselves and work on each other and get over our past, do some personal kind of development work, which sounds kind of crazy on like a national level. But I just want to put it in context for a moment, okay? Everyone wants to live a really great life and to create this beautiful future. But as long as someone is not complete with their past, that's not possible, right? So when there was a terrorist attack, I think it was in 2000, called the Lynch in Ramallah. There was 2 soldiers in the reserves accidentally drove into a Palestinian village. They were stopped and arrested by the police there. Word got out very fast in the village that there are 2 Israeli soldiers in this police station, and hundreds of rioters mobbed the station and just bludgeoned the 2 soldiers to death and danced on their dead bodies. And it was all over the news. It was a scene. I came back from high school, walked into my apartment, and I opened the door, and there, I'll never forget it, my father is watching the news on the TV right in front of me. There is an angry mob cheering, yeah, and hooting and hollering, while they are beating 2 lifeless bodies of Israeli soldiers. and they have literally just blood all over their hands, and they're ecstatic. They're having the time of their lives. And in that moment, without noticing, first of all, just tears started streaming down my eyes. It was a sight to behold. And without noticing, I decided in that moment, wow, these aren't human beings. These are animals. You know, you can't make peace with animals. It's impossible. These aren't people. They're not human. They're animals. And that became my reality. Now, after that, anytime that you would approach me and you say, well, you know, you could ask me the same question, Geoff. Ron, how do we get to peace in the Middle East? My answer to you would be, what are you talking about? What peace in the Middle East? These are effing animals, dude. There'll never be peace in the Middle East. You can't do peace with animals. They're murderers. And as long as that is in the space, peace really isn't possible, you know? But I had to get over my past. Like I had to realize for myself, personally, as a transformation for myself, to realize, oh my God, I saw a traumatic thing that was horrific. It was horrendous. It was disgusting. It was whatever. It was, call it demonic even. Call it whatever you want. But it doesn't mean that they're all animals. It doesn't. I really had to get that for myself in order for this thing called peace to become even a possibility. Now, in the Middle East, for Israelis, for Palestinians, for Arabs, for Iranians, for Saudis, for everyone is indoctrinated that the Jews are the devil and that they drink the blood of Christian children, and, you know, that they're all out to murder the Muslims and rape our women. And that, that's what people are taught. Not people, that's what kids are taught. Things like that. And how to cause peace in the Middle East is by, I think, first untangling those knots and chains that of beliefs and, you know, and past derived traumas that everyone has in their mind, to even have a conversation about it in the first place. And that's a hell of a challenge to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it seems very clear that people that I've also talked to that are both Israeli and Lebanese, you know, that they're on both sides, they're taught, you know, that the other side is the devil, and that, you know, we have to kill them at all costs. And there's no getting around that. You know, that's how it goes, even though, you know, there are really good people on both sides. And mostly, I mean, I would submit that most of the people are good human beings. It's just that there's a faction or a contingent of people that are intent on murdering the other because they think that it's the right thing to do. So,
yeah. So yes. And the thing is that one thing that's really important to get also is that, see, we're always trying to fix this problem. And it sucks. It sucks as hell. I'm in a freaking wheelchair, for God's sake, because of that. I had to fight against this. Hezbollah, which is a terrorist government in Lebanon, started firing tens of thousands of rockets into my country. I had to go defend my country against that. I ended up in a wheelchair because of that. Great. So, you know, I paid firsthand for this monkey business. Having said that, you know, I can't hold a grudge against, like I can, but I choose not to hold a grudge against that for the rest of my life. That's because it's really damn complicated. Not all problems are simple. Human beings are complicated to begin with, and this is, for thousands of years, has been one of the most complicated problems in the world. There's a whole lot of past-derived garbage that people have in their minds around this. And it's really easy to judge it, okay? Over the last 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken, there have been 3 different terrorist attacks here in Israel where, it's an incredible coincidence. Many choose not to call it a coincidence, where 3 families that each have 2 siblings in them, the 2 siblings were murdered in a terrorist attack here in Israel, of like 2 siblings and 3 different families. Okay. Now, when you hear about something like that, it really messes you up. You know, it's like when you hear about a school shooting in America, it like really messes you up.
Yeah.
your brain just goes, what the hell, and blah, blah, blah. We got to do something about this, that. And it's the same thing on both sides. And I think sometimes the more you try and fix things, the more pushback there is. And we need to engage in more dialogue, more speaking between people, and to try and, it's so counterintuitive to try and somehow help each other and get more invested in each other than to, separate ourselves from each other, because it ain't going to get any better.
Yeah. Yeah. I was in preparation for our little interview here. I was thinking about all conflict is based on the illusion of our separateness and the denial of our interconnectedness and our interrelatedness. And I think that's accurate. We are all human beings on this planet. We all don't know exactly what's going on. And then we convince ourselves that we're separate and different from other people because we choose to have different ideas about God and how to worship God. And then our worshiping of God is the right way. And so therefore we should kill them because they're worshiping the wrong way, which makes absolutely no sense. And for sure, God is not a fan of. So the question is, for me, is like, how do we create a situation where people are actually having dialogue, where people are actually talking and they're considering that we are related and that we're talking about that, which doesn't seem to be the focus that's going on in the Middle East right now. In fact, it seems very clear that, people are trying to rally people to attack Israel more, at least the Iranians are, et cetera. There's no discussion about, well, how do we get along and how do we see our interconnectedness? I just wonder, when 9/11 happened, there was a moment for about 10 minutes where everybody really felt super related to each other. It was a really beautiful moment, very fleeting moment where we all felt like family, that we're all in this together and that this is stupid, and all of the kind of racial tensions and whatever tensions dissipated, and we recognized that we were all together, as well as Americans in that particular case, but, as human beings. How could this happen? How could people do this? There was an instant where the illusion of separation dropped away. We saw that we were interrelated and we acted like that. You could see it in the faces of people walking down the street. And then that just kind of dissipated into the fear-based operating system, the fear-based, greed-based operating system that most of humanity has installed in their brains.
Yep. So I have an answer, which is my opinion, and many people disagree with me and might not like what I have to say about it. But it's a free country, so why not? I am not of the opinion that, that revolutions and social justice and any kind of justice, any kind of pursuit of justice is something that is effective. Okay. It works to an extent, but it's not the way to nirvana. And I actually am of the belief that not talking about things, not making things an issue is the way to not making them an issue. Because if you do talk about things and make it an issue, then that's the issue. Okay. So for example, if, we know very well this whole, there's a lot of issues with like racial tension in America and all that, right? So, which it's all valid, yeah. But like, there's so many issues that the reason by us talking about it and keeping it as the talking point of the day all the time, there's always naturally going to be, so I'm going to tell you, Geoff, about, hey, why don't we talk about XYZ? But then if you're against XYZ, then you're going to fight me on, why you're against XYZ. Then we end up arguing all the time about XYZ. How about we just don't talk about XYZ and we just create a really close relationship with each other? And that's it. And we just live our lives and we prosper and we focus on how to be good. Now, that's my...
So the idea there is if we just stop arguing about the thing that we were arguing about before, we just act like that wasn't a thing, that wasn't an issue, and we just focus on our relationship, then the thing that divided us previously will just disappear.
Eventually, yeah.
Is that right?
That if eventually, yes, right. And the thing is that now, by the way, don't get me wrong, doesn't mean that action shouldn't be taken about it. And you can, and even what I just said right now is like very utopian, because you could bet your ass that the media and the politicians are going to do everything they can to coax and, irk our mental states and our feelings and our emotions, and to trigger the hell out of us so that we do argue about it, because that's what's going to bring them rating and votes, right? I mean, nothing else going to, like, hey, let's all be friends is not going to bring anybody ratings and votes. So,
maybe not.
Well, yeah, well, not now, right?
That's my whole policy. Look, you know what I mean? Let's all be friends and get along, for God's sake. You know what I mean?
Even when it comes to peace in the Middle East, when it comes to peace in the Middle East, you'd be surprised that people don't really talk about peace in the Middle East these days anymore. And I actually think that's a great thing. I honestly do. I don't, when I go, that most of the pharmacists in Israel are Arabs, most of them.
Okay.
And when I go into a pharmacy and I see an Arab pharmacist, then who cares? I love that. I love that. It makes me happy that we are more integrated with each other, that we're part of each other's lives. It makes me happy that when you go to an Israeli hospital, a great majority of the doctors in the Israeli hospitals are Arabs. It makes me happy that stuff is like that. It really does. I don't want to go into a hospital and have an Arab doctor take my blood, give me a blood test, and then me have a conversation about the conflict with him. Why the hell would I do that? That's freaking weird.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Okay.
Why would I do that? It's like, stop that. Let's just go get falafel together and shut up. What the hell's the point of it? So that's my take on it. Okay. Now, here's a kicker of this whole thing, though. Everything I just said is a bunch of new agey white American garbage. Okay. And it's valid. It's true. It's great. And that's the way, that's how, God willing, we should always think. And we got to remember that it's a tough neighborhood. And if you go to a Blood or a Crip on the streets in Compton and you talk all kinds of new agey stuff to him and he doesn't like you, he's going to punch you in the mouth. So the new agey stuff doesn't have any value unless, that's the complicated thing. We got to kind of stay two-headed about it and get that we're in this for the long haul, probably praying for a miracle, and to just help each other evolve as people, to help each other's communities evolve as people. I really, really want the Arab communities to have a great electrical system, to have streetlights. I do. I want them to. I want them to have a great education. I want them to have a great everything. And we're getting there. That's the good news. We are getting there. It's moving forward.
How is that?
Because there are systems in place. There is the government. There's a lot of aid from around the world. The Israeli government is very lenient. It helps incredibly. The Israeli government is what gives them gas and concrete and oil and electricity and all the things that they need. By the way, just so you know, even when Gaza fires rockets into Israel, then the Israeli government still passes on, humanitarian aid to them and everything, most of what they need. Now, unfortunately, in Gaza specifically, that's a really, really, really problematic space. They take the concrete and they take what they're given and they use it against Israel. They put their resources to use against Israel. They hide missiles inside of the hospital so that they could shoot out of the hospital and that Israel can't bomb the hospital because that's where because it's a hospital. They know that Israel won't do that. So it's super complicated and it's a hell of a math problem. And I'm also and I'm not trying to be, but I just want you to know, whoever's watching this, I hope that it doesn't sound like I'm coming off, as like super Israeli and super pro-Israel or something like that. It might. I acknowledge that it might. And if that's how it comes off, then I apologize. It's not, really isn't my agenda. What I really care about is, by the way, because there are lots of people that say, yeah, well, he's not telling the truth right now, and whatever propaganda we hear all over the place. Maybe the most important thing is that there's so much garbage that happens that we hear on the internet, on the news, by politicians. No one knows anything, okay? Like, the best thing is to talk with people in real life and hear like what their actual experiences are in life. Because the rest is part of the war machine, part of all the propaganda that goes on.
Yeah. So, on this show, I often talk a lot about the love operating system, which I think is kind of a critical thing to peace and also to just living a good life. How do I personally come from love in my life? Not because it's like cool and good. No, because it's like legitimately gives me a very higher quality of life and makes me feel intimately connected with other people. And it makes me feel intimately connected to my spirituality and my relationships to all of the people around and all the animals and plants and this biosphere, whatever we live on. I like to contemplate the mystery. I'm all about that because I fundamentally believe that the fear-based operating system that we have inherited, it doesn't serve us, and it certainly doesn't serve us anymore moving forward. Now that we are actually as interconnected as we are with the internet, with technology, et cetera, there's no denying. I mean, I'm talking to you in Israel. I'm in Northern California. I don't even know how many, 6,000 miles away or something, right? And oceans, the whole thing. All right. And we're talking in real time right now. So there's no denial of our interconnectedness, of our ability to connect right here, right now. And I fundamentally believe that the love operating system, if chosen on an individual level, if I say to myself, okay, how do I love more? How do I, instead of coming from fear and scarcity, how do I come from love? Where do I find that? How do I love myself? Which just sounds crazy if you're an American, or maybe if you're Israeli as well. How do I love myself, and how do I bring that to other people? How do I open the door to other people so that we can just, as you say, just be normal and be related, go have falafel together. And I think that is wholly possible. I think it's wholly possible to create that interest in the hearts and minds of everyone on the planet. And in fact, as somebody who espouses that theory and lives by that theory, I find it to be incredibly beneficial. My life now is just much more enjoyable than it was when I was, I don't know that I was ever a full-on fear monger, but I can definitely say that, when I was more operating from a fear-based model, I was a very unhappy man, and now I've found happiness and love because I espouse that theory. And I just kind of I wonder, you mentioned unless there's some kind of a miracle, I just wonder what kind of a miracle could occur that people would stop and say, okay, wait a minute, this is all bullshit. My conflict with them is not real. We are related. Period. End of story.
I think I have somewhat of an answer for it, although it also be kind of vague. Okay, so here's the thing about like love mentality. The thing with love mentality and that kind of paradigm of thought or feeling is that when you're in a situation of survival, your brain can't just come up with that stuff. If you're dead ass broke, if I'm broke, I don't want to hear about your love mentality. Okay. If my life is being threatened, take your love mentality and shove it up somewhere. Okay. If go to someone who who's an addict and tell them about love mentality.
I try.
Yeah, you try. It ain't gonna. It's dead in the water. You can't, right? So the thing is that the brain, and actually right now, and I can give you like an insight into actual brain research, because it's some of what we teach, some of what my company does is that we teach extensively, heavily into brain science when we work with our clients, just to get how the brain works and the constraints that the brain actually has in ingesting information. Like, there's just stuff that my brain cannot hear in certain situations. Okay. It's like having a logical conversation with a drunk person. That person's brain cannot get what you're saying. Period. End of the story. It doesn't matter how you spin it. Okay. So one of the things that's tricky in the Middle East, in this area here, that is that there are situations of imminent survival.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's tough to have a conversation that's not cynical about love, right, and about humanity. So I think that if there's any action that people want to take, or that we should be taking more, is to do what we can to create an environment where the brain can have the human brain can have the opportunity to actually receive that kind of thinking, which means to help people prosper in terms of their prosperity. You know, poor people don't want to hear too much about love theory and all kinds of whatever. So if you can't pay your bills, if you're sick and unhealthy and can't get healthy, if you are literally threatened in your own security, your personal security, or if your children are threatened, your family is threatened, we need to do what we can in order to bring integrity to those areas. Once those areas get better and better and better for society, then people will be more receptive to talking about, things that are outside of that survival realm. You actually need to be able to survive, to feel confident in your survival.
Yeah. Well, I would argue that, having been to Malawi, Africa, some other places where people are extremely poor, there are some extremely loving people that are in those situations. Now, I'm not arguing that, it's not good and a lot easier to invest in a love operating system if you have your basic needs met. That's true. That's fundamental. Otherwise, it's challenging. But that doesn't mean that you can't be loving in the situation that you're in, regardless. And I think, the cynicism is the enemy. The cynicism always goes back to the fear-based model, no matter what. And it doesn't want to hear about the love-based model because that's the only real threat to its existence. And the cynicism is in itself an entity that I think robs humanity of being sovereign beings. They're just constantly, that just puts us into a reactive state where we're constantly reacting to threats and We're not responding from a place of, okay, wait, give me a second. Okay, wait, we are all interrelated. How do I come from love here? How do I just smile? Because my internal state and how it is that I am being profoundly affects you and your internal state and how you're being. And if I smile at you and am welcoming and loving towards you, then that automatically makes you want to reciprocate. There's a thing in the brain where there's an automatic reciprocation that occurs. You're able to be that way because I'm being that way, which is why people like the Dalai Lama are so fun to go watch and listen to, because then you're like, oh, wow, that's great. He's so spiritual. And then, you can go back to being an asshole at the local coffee shop or whatever, But whereas if you actually just adopted that mentality, which he has, which is that, he doesn't see himself as above anybody else. And, he does fundamentally see that we are all interrelated. Then that's the shift. I think for me, listening to kind of what you're saying, and I realize, I live in Northern California in the woods. There's no, the biggest threats to me are some bears, know what I mean? And they haven't fucked with me. Okay. So, I realize that I'm coming from a space of, I live out in nature. I'm living in a place that I truly love, that I chose, and where the people also who surround me really like living here, so then they're automatically more friendly. So then it's easier and easier to operate from that place, and to create from that place. That's why I chose to be here. I realize that. And also in places where it's super awful to exist, like probably some places, you know, in Israel or in places where you describe the Palestinian way of life and how they're burning all the garbage and etc. Like I can get how it would
Africa,
be very hard to
Yemen,
come from that place.
China, Nepal, like it doesn't end.
Syria.
Yeah.
So all these places have, it's a lot harder to just live. However, I fundamentally believe that even in those circumstances, you can come from love. And that's the only thing that's really going to make any difference. To me, I think that's the only way that we achieve peace is if we do come from love, is if we do recognize that we're related, and as if we give up the ghost on this whole fucking bullshit that my religion is better than your religion, et cetera, and, this is my territory versus your territory. Like if we just fundamentally own our interrelatedness, our shared consciousness on this planet, then that's a place where we can actually get along. When that becomes more important than being right, then we'll achieve peace.
Well, I want to just one more thing on that is that it's not only giving up being right, which is huge, but here's the kind of funny thing about it. Well, not funny, but tough perhaps. It's, am I willing to be responsible for the whole thing?
Right.
Well, what does that mean? That's the really tough one. Like if I come to somebody who's in Hamas and I tell him, listen, we're all interrelated, man. The guy that wants to throw me into the ocean because I'm a Jew. And I say, we're all interrelated. We just got to love each other. No. It ain't going to go down. We're not resting on the same frequency. Okay? I'm not on his, he's not on mine. Like I'm in terms of the conversation like this. But what would really be extraordinary is if I could just get him. If I could just, just listen and get the communication and be like, wow, that's a really tough freaking life, man. And even if he hates me and even if he whatever, just to get the communication and in this very weird way, it's very weird to be like, I'm willing to be responsible for having you have a great life. I don't even know how. It's how I started off. You asked me how do we make peace in the Middle East? I don't even know. I don't know how it's going to happen. But I am willing to be I am willing to be responsible for it. And at least to be responsible for that, I came out of a woman at the right place at the right time. And that produced this life that I have. This life, I had a privilege of having lunch with Warren Buffett one time with a group of people in Omaha, Nebraska. And
where I'm from.
Are you from Omaha?
From Omaha,
I didn't know you're from Omaha.
Big time.
So did you run into him?
I met him maybe once. My dad knew him kind of and was friends with his daughter, Susie. And I met his son, Peter, a few times. Who's a musician, actually.
Okay, cool. Well, when we were having lunch with Warren Buffett, then he was asked the question, how do you become successful? And I'll never forget his answer. He said, you're already successful. You were born to the right woman at the right place at the right time. And, and that's like the whole thing. That's like 98% of the whole game. You already won. You're successful. You didn't have to do anything for it. So I could see that if I was born to a different woman in a different place at a different time, I could see that I could end up in that situation and I could have some kind of understanding and compassion to that, and
by getting where they're coming from.
Maybe if I get that and they got that, I got it. Maybe something might open up for that person that they'll be like, this guy isn't like the devil. This guy doesn't, he's not what they said about him. And here's again this duality thing that you're going to really hate, right? And I got to make sure that in an interaction like that, I'm still immediately prepared to defend myself if that doesn't go the way that I want it to, because that's the neighborhood, man. It is tricky. It's tricky.
Right. But without creating that kind of dialogue and those opportunities for discussion, there's no hope.
There's no hope. No.
I mean, it's just going to get worse. And I mean, I can't predict the future, obviously, but it seems like, right now, in the last couple of days, Iranian, what's the guy's name? Ismail Qaani, who leads the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, their Quds force. He's, trying to convince leaders from Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad to attack Israel. There's that, and now Saudi Arabia, which was sort of building ties with Israel, is now also building ties with Hamas, which God only knows, everybody's silent about that. Well, we don't want to talk about that because that really fucks things up, obviously, for those peace negotiations. It seems like things are getting hotter over there in terms of the willingness or desire to destroy Israel. So then how, in the midst of all of that, do we create inroads to peace or conversations for peace, conversations of relatedness, conversations where, you can express your situation and everything that you've gone through, as an Israeli man, even getting paralyzed, in a way that, where you forgive them, which you seems like you do. And then you're willing to totally hear them out on what terrible things have happened to them as a result of this conflict on their side and get them, how do we create that kind of a environment?
Again, I don't know how to answer that. The only thing I do have is to be able to impact the only thing that I can control, which is my own life, and to do good things in my own life, and to, make sure that it's going to sound stupid, but to make sure that I brush my teeth twice a day and not only in the morning, and to, and to be nice to the people that I meet on a regular basis, to not beep my horn like a total jerk at some lady that can't park and I'm in a rush somewhere and I want her to, I want car to explode, but just like to restrain myself to just build my life to be better and better so that I can be like a clearing. I can be a space where I'm not this tightened up, balled up fist of a human being that just wants to, punish everybody and to, spray my opinion in people's faces all the time. And I think it really starts on a personal level. On what you pointed to with that whole Saudi Arabia and all that geopolitical stuff, that's a whole different game. I mean, the whole geopolitics thing, that really, by the way, points to this neighborhood again. I keep coming back to the tough neighborhood analogy. There were the Abraham Accords. Something miraculous happened. I mean, it was right at the end of the Trump era, and where people don't really get this, but it's one of the biggest achievements in diplomatic history is the Abraham Accords that actually cut a peace treaty between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, and that brought Saudi Arabia closer. There are ties between Israel and Saudi Arabia. This is like unheard of. No one ever thought that would ever happen anytime soon. And it happened. So that's like a miracle. Now, it also happened, though, by, again, powerful treaties that have to do with prosperity and security. Now, once those treaties regarding prosperity and security are starting to be not so tight, not so great, because America doesn't emanate the same kind of confidence, and the United States doesn't emanate the same kind of security and the same kind of confidence to its to the people that it has treaties with, at least in the Middle East, against Iran, such that the Saudis and the others feel like they can count on those agreements. So naturally, on the playground, if America was the big strong wrestler dude that's going to protect you from that other bully jerk, and the strong wrestler dude is starting to get cold feet, and he's starting to go to like drama classes, and he joined the Glee Club and all this, and then he's like, wait a second, he left the wrestling team. Then you go, wait a second, I need to make a treaty with some other strong guy that's going to protect me on the playground. So the whole geopolitical thing moves around like that. China's involved in it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. See, China's the new big strong dude on the block. So,
yeah.
So everything gravitates towards, that's how this neighborhood works. The strong survive here, and it's complicated, and we have to hold the space for brotherhood, acceptance, cooperation, peace, prosperity on a day-to-day basis in our own personal lives, to God willing, having that happen one day. I just don't know what else could make the difference. And I take what people say otherwise with a grain of salt for whoever does think that they know.
Fair enough. Yeah, I like it. The answer to peace is personal development in a big way.
Yep.
And getting invested in, well, for me, how do I love more? How do I create more love in the world? That's great. Okay, good. So we're just kind of reaching the end of our time here. For you, what is sacred and what is insane?
For me, what is sacred is a human being's ability to think and speak freely. Anytime, that's what's sacred to me. When anytime that people want to suppress someone else's thoughts or someone else's speech, I think that's the ultimate sin in my view.
That's insane.
That's insane.
Is that what you're saying? That's insane.
Well, now that you say that,
what is sacred is freedom of speech, and what's insane is limiting freedom of speech.
Well, I actually don't think that that's insane, because that's kind of, I mean, when you open up the news or you talk to your friends, then you see that everyone's kind of obsessed in controlling other people's thoughts and speaking. So I don't know how insane that is. That's actually kind of normal for humanity, I think. What's insane for me is people that wake up in the morning seeking to do harm to other people. And there are people like that.
Yeah.
How to screw someone else over. That's amazing to me. That's insane.
Yeah.
I didn't live their life, so as much as I want to judge them, and I do, it's not my place to judge. Maybe if I lived their life, I would be in the same place.
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, let's wrap it up. First of all, big thanks to you, Ron. I really appreciate you. You are a true brother of mine, and I love you so much. And I really appreciate you and your stand for peace in the world and in the Middle East, and what you do with your life. Lunacy is a creation of myself, Geoff Eido, with podcast management by Kimberly Joy Voice, LLC. Thank you so much. And if you want to support this program, please go to patreon.com/Lunacy Podcast to become part of our team. Much love, everybody.